Shalom. Tomorrow we're reading Parashat Beshalah. The Shabbat is called Shabbat Shira because we say in that parasha as Ashir Moshe Ubnei Israel. This is a song that we say it every single day of the year without any exception, even on Tisha B'Av, on the most sad days of our Jewish calendar, we say them. To every year I have tradition that in certain parashiot I delve more into subjects that I dealt with in the past. For example, Shabbat Shira, a couple of years ago I did talk about the contribution of Jews to Arabic music. In Parashat Vayigash, I delve more into the nuances of the Hebrew language because it says Kipihem daber alechem, Rashi say Belashon HaKodesh. So today I selected to talk about the contribution of Iraqi Jews to Arabic music, and one of the reasons that inspired me to talk about this subject is the fact that my wife and we are in Porto, Portugal. It has the second largest synagogue in Europe, and it's called Kaduri. Kaduri are Iraqi Jews. So I said that let me delve into more to see how much and the contribution of the Iraqi Jews to Arabic music. And it is stunning. I knew all along that we did a lot that the Jews of Iraq did a lot to the Arabic music, but not to the extent that I found out during my studies. Probably the most famous Jewish composers and singers and instrumentalists are Saleh and Dawood al-Kuwaiti. There are two brothers. One is born in 1910, one in 1908, and their parents took them to Kuwait because there were better economic opportunities. And when they were 10 years old and 8 years old, Saleh was 10 and Dawood was 8, his uncle brought him from India. One, he brought him violin, and the other one brought him oud. And they started playing with them, and they took a very famous oud player, Muhammad Qadir, who taught them, and they became very shortly very famous. And they started to have recording in Kuwait, and they decided to move back to Iraq, where they came from. They went first to Basra, and then it didn't fit them again, so they moved to Baghdad. And in Baghdad, they became extremely famous. They were part of the orchestra. They formed the orchestra of the Iraqi radio station. And the radio station, they used to have orchestra all over the world, and it included usually the absolute best musicians. And Baghdad was no exception. Also, they were the courtier of the singers, courtier of Malik Ghazi in Iraq. And they gave, they say 1,000 composition. Especially Saleh. Saleh was more profuse composer than his brother Dawood. 1,000 so far. They have documented 700 of his compositions, and the Udayad Netuyah, and still they are gathering and finding more. Incidentally, there was a book that was published in Arabic in Iraq about Saleh al-Kuwaiti. It is written by his son Shlomo, an Israeli fellow, and when he was introducing it, there is Center for the Heritage of Iraqi Jews in Israel in Or Yehuda, close to Tel Aviv. He said that the book was composed and written in Baghdad. It was published very recently. I'm talking about 2-3 years ago, in Syria, and then was put on the market and publicized in London. So we can see here that we are noticing here a new phenomena, because during Saddam Hussein, him and all other Arab regime, they stopped playing any music that was composed by Jews, or if they had to, they did not say. They call it Turath, that this is heritage of Iraqi music. They did not mention that they are Jews at all. The same thing I do know in Halab. I remember that they used to play the Ahim Ghazali, that they used to one also violin, one awad, oud player, and since they emigrated to Israel, in Halab they stopped playing their music, and they have relatives, children and grandchildren and great grandchildren in New York and in Israel, and they are trying to collect what do they have, especially because there are thought of closing the Israel Broadcasting Authority radio station, and with them, God knows what will happen to those priceless archives. They are trying to collect them. We wish them all the luck. So the Kuwaiti now. In fact, what is interesting about the Kuwaiti Jewish community is that it is probably the oldest. I'm sure it is the oldest Jewish community in the world, because it started with to a large extent with Sanherib, when he exiled the 10 tribes. And of course, it continued with Nebuchadnezzar, and before the final exile, he took Joachim 10 years prior to the final exile, and many of them they lived there. Some of them came back with Ezra and Nehemiah, but we do know that the Iraqi Jews had very significant impact on Judaism. The Talmud Bavli is unparalleled in its depth, and it left indelible effect on the Judaic way of thinking. Anyway, they stayed there until in the beginning of the 20th century. They became very successful, because after Sykes-Picot, the Iraq became under the British mandate, and the Jews, being cultured and literate, and they have connection in Europe, and they spoke English, they were instrumental in making Iraq a modern country. However, we do know that there is no stable future for Jews in the exile, and Iraq is no exception. In 1941, there were there were pogroms, and they killed 180 Jews, and they wounded 1,000 of them. The absolute catastrophe. It was on Hag Shavuot. And some of them started to think about leaving. However, after the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, The Iraqi government said that the Jews must surrender their citizenship, with that all their assets, and leave. And many of them had left in a very famous Mibsa, very famous project or operation called Azra al-Nahamiya, where about close to 150,000 Jews were over 18 months period were airlifted from Iraq to Israel, where they became extremely successful community. Many chief of staff in the Israeli army, ministers were from Iraqi descent, like Moshe Vahetzi, Yitzhak Mordechai. Yitzhak Mordechai Davka was Kurdi, in fact, I need to mention that the first finance minister of Iraq in the beginning of the 20th century was also a Jew, Hazael Sassoon. He established the modern economic basis to the country of Iraq. So in Israel, they came the two Kuwaitis. They were unknown. At that time, there was an idea that we're gonna make the country Israel Ashkenazi. They didn't treat the Sephardic community and their culture on equal basis as the Ashkenazim. Baruch Hashem, now it changed, and because of the influence of the Sephardim, the very positive influence. Now we have the Sabra and their descendants. There is now recognition that they did a mistake at the beginning, that all diversity is very important to the health of the culture of any country. So in any event, first they struggled to Kuwaiti, then they joined the Dar al-Izaa al-Israeliyya, the Israel Broadcast Authority. The director of the musical director of that was also an Iraqi Jew. I'm going to talk about him in a couple of seconds. His name is Azuri. His real name is Azra Haron. In any event, they started to be famous again, and they appealed to people from Iraqi descent, as well as they were listened to extensively in the Arab countries also, and they had really good music. I'm going to put one example at the end of this program, put the link to it on YouTube. They did it's very good music. In any event, they were also the best people and they developed to a very large extent al-Maqam al-Iraqi, the Iraqi Maqam that is recognized by UNESCO, and I'm not a fan of UNESCO at all, but there is some truth to what they do, and that is that they recognize the Iraqi Maqam as non-plastic art. That is something that you cannot see it, you cannot touch it, but you appreciate it. So it is a very valuable genre of music that they did. And they became again famous. They recognized that they were not treated well at the beginning. Now there is a street in South Tel Aviv called Ha'ahim Kuwaiti, Saleh and Dawood al-Kuwaiti, for the recognition to what they did to the music in Israel and in Iraq. Incidentally, they were very nice people. They were very famous for their generosity, and as well as using their connection to save people who are in trouble of their travel. Now there is. I want to as I mentioned before, that the director of music was Azuri. He was, before I talk about him. I need to mention that practically all the instrumentalists in Iraq, they were they were Jews, and many of them were blind. In fact, they were in Saginehor for the community. They took care of them, for them not to beg to beg for money. They taught them a profession that they excelled in. For example, we know many of them, they were in Israel. Two particular ones, Albert Elias, who was in Denai, Halil, and Abraham Salman in Kanun. Both of them passed away within a few months of each other, 2014. They were Saginehor and blind, and they advanced Arabic music to very, very, very large extent. So in fact, there was a Congress, International Congress of Arabic Music in Cairo in 1932. The entire delegation of Iraq, except their leader, Al-Kubanji, that we mentioned before, were Jews. Each and every one of them, except for the Rais, because it's not nice. And during that time, they met very famous singers, Abdul Wahab, and so on and so forth, and they struck a good relationship with them. And Azuri came to Israel in 1932-33, way before the establishment of the State of Israel. And so all in all, the phenomena of Jewish musicians in Iraq is unparalleled anywhere in the world. When we talked about the contribution of Egyptian Jews to music, of course it is tremendous contribution, because only Dawood Hosni did 23% of the recorded doors, which is the most complicated and complex genre of music. He did it. He did the first opera. We have famous singers like Zaki Mrad and his daughter Leila Mrad and his son Munir Mrad. Munir Mrad, I do know at least of 38 compositions that he did. A good part of them was to Abdul Halim Hafiz. So they did a lot, but it pales compared to the contribution of Iraqi Jews. So it is very unique. 1,000 composition of the Kuwaiti brothers, all the instrumentalists, many good singers, Salima Mrad. They are two sisters. One of them is they are called Rahlo and Tayra Hakim. They used to go to the Hammamat to sing. And we have also the recording on YouTube. Rahlo Hakim, you can listen to some of this. It's something unique. So all in all, to summarize, just like in every other field of humanity, we have our print on it, and imprint on that part of civilization. Even in areas where no one expected us to contribute, we did to much more than our number. So we and in the Jews of Iraq were no exception. So we have to be proud. Tonight we're gonna say to say ki Banu Baharta. He did. We are Beni Bechori Israel. Hashem selected us. In fact, even in the Quran, Ya Bani Israel, inna faddalnakum ala al-alamin. It says that Hashem selected us, not because we are better than anyone else. Far from it. He selected us to carry, to advance the humanity further ahead, to be more responsible about spreading the message of God to humanity. And this is what we are doing. In Shabbat Shira, today is the ultimate Geulah in this the Shevai Shel Pesach, and as a Shir Moshe, we hope that Kimeset Rab Saimer in Flaot, that just like He redeemed us from Egypt, He will redeem us from the Galut that we are in, and the Kibbutz Galut that we all will gather in the land of Israel and we impatiently wait for the Mashiach and for the message of Ki mitzion teseh Torah dvar Hashem Yerushalayim, that at that time they will see that our message is the right message, and that we are really men of God on His earth. Shabbat Shalom.